Hello, my friends. Welcome back. Bread? You might be thinking, I eat this every day. What's so special about it? But listen to this. In 2019, a guy named Seamus, the guy who invented Xbox, got permission to take samples from 4,500-year-old Egyptian pottery. Inside the clay, still sleeping, were yeast cells. Real yeast. From the time the pyramids were being built. He fed them ancient grains, barley and einkorn, the same wheat the Egyptians used. And the yeast woke up. It started bubbling. It came back to life after 45 centuries. He baked a loaf. He said it tasted sweeter and richer than modern sourdough. Think about that. A taste from 2500 BC on a plate in 2019. Now, after hearing that, don't you kind of wonder, when was the last time you smelled fresh bread? Close your eyes for a second. Really. Maybe it was from a bakery down the street. Maybe from your own toaster this morning. Maybe from the oven on a holiday. That warm, golden smell. It feels safe, doesn't it? It feels like home. Now hold that feeling, because we're going back, way back, to the very first time that smell ever floated into the night air, over 10,000 years ago, by a campfire. This is the story of bread, but really, it's the story of us. Let's go back to that campfire. Imagine a cold night more than 10,000 years ago. A small group of our ancestors sits around a fire. They are hunters and gatherers. They've been walking all day. They're tired and hungry. Someone pours out the last handful of wild wheat grains. They're tiny, hard, mixed with dirt. A few grains fall into the warm ashes near the fire. No one notices at first. After a while, a new smell starts to rise. Not meat, not fruit, something warm and a little sweet. Someone reaches in and pulls the grains out. They're a little brown, a little puffed up. He puts them in his mouth. They're rough, but then a steady, comforting sweetness spreads. That taste stayed with them. So they tried again and again. They crushed more grains, mixed them with water, cooked the paste on hot stones. It wasn't the soft bread we know today, but it was the beginning. This is how bread shaped civilization first. It gave us a reason to stay. Of course, bread didn't really become bread until someone figured out how to make it rise. That probably happened by accident. A bowl of wet flour left out overnight. Wild yeast, the kind that's always floating in the air, lands in the bowl. Bubbles form by morning. It's puffed up, alive. Most people probably threw it away. But one day, someone looked at it and thought, well, I'm not going to waste it. They baked it anyway, and out came something the world had never seen before. Soft, light, airy. That someone changed everything. Remember that guy Seamus from the beginning? The yeast he found, that's exactly what happened here, just 4,500 years later. Bread doesn't just carry history, it carries life. And that life, that invisible life in a bowl of bubbling flour, is what finally made bread, bread. It's also what made us stop wandering. Because once you have fields of grain, and dough that rises, and loaves that feed a village, you don't leave. You stay. You build. You become something new. But this choice came with a cost. Scientists have studied the bones of early farmers and compared them with hunter-gatherers. They found something surprising. The first farmers were shorter. Their teeth were more worn down. Their bones showed signs of harder work and worse nutrition. Why? Because their diet became less varied. Hunter-gatherers ate many different plants and animals. Early farmers depended mostly on just a few grains. We traded variety and freedom for stability and predictability. That first roasted taste was not just food, it was the start of a new way of living. From that night on, bread became part of our story, a symbol of safety, but also of sacrifice. Once people started staying in one place, bread took on a new job. It didn't just feed families anymore, it helped build whole societies. Let's look at 3 places where bread made the impossible possible. First, Egypt, at the foot of the Great Pyramid. Picture this. The sun is burning hot. Thousands of workers are pulling stones that weigh more than elephants. How do you keep these men going day after day? You pay them with bread. The Egyptian government ran huge bakeries along the Nile. Every morning, workers lined up and received their daily wage: flat, hearty loaves of bread and jugs of beer. That was their salary. That was how they bought food for their families. Bread was money. If you worked for the state, you got paid in bread. You could trade it, save it, live on it. One loaf had a fixed value. It was like a coin you could eat. Without this system, without bread as payment, the pyramids would still be sand. You can't move millions of stones on an empty stomach. Now let's go to Rome. Rome understood something that changed history. If you control bread, you control people. The city of Rome had over 1 million people. That's a lot of hungry mouths. So the government set up something called the grain dole. Every day, citizens with the right papers could get free or cheap bread. They lined up at distribution centers all over the city. Why did the government do this? Because they knew a hungry population gets angry. A fed population stays calm. The famous phrase, bread and circuses, wasn't a joke. It was a political strategy. Give people free bread and entertainment, and they won't rebel. Bread was the glue that held the empire together. When grain ships from Egypt were late, riots broke out. When bread was plentiful, Rome was peaceful. The emperor's power depended on one thing: keeping the bread flowing. Then there's Mesopotamia, the land between 2 rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. Here, bread pushed humans to create something even more important: writing. Some of the oldest clay tablets we've found aren't poems or stories. They're records, lists. 10 loaves for the temple workers, 5 jugs of beer for the soldiers. Barley owed to this family. Think about that. The very first words humans ever wrote down were bread receipts. We invented writing because we needed to keep track of who got how much bread. So look at what happened. Bread wasn't just food anymore. It was money. It was political control. It was the reason we invented writing. To grow it, we needed calendars to follow the seasons. To store it, we built granaries and learned to plan for the future. To share it fairly, we created writing, numbers, and rules. To protect the land it grew on, we formed armies and governments. This whole complex thing we call civilization, its earliest engine was a simple deal with a seed. I'll help you grow, and you'll help me stay. Bread was the first thing we ever had to manage. And by learning to manage it, we learned to manage almost everything else. This is how bread shaped civilization next. It taught us to organize and to invent. This is the remarkable part. Bread didn't look the same everywhere. As people spread across the earth, bread changed with them. It adapted to new climates, new tools, new ways of living. Over time, it became a kind of secret code, a language written in flour and water. Let's travel the world and read this code together. You see a thin, flat bread with a pocket? That's pita from the Middle East. Here's what it's saying. It's hot here. We don't want to keep the fire burning for hours, so we bake our bread fast. And look, it puffs up and makes a pocket, perfect for filling and sharing with the people around the table. You see a dark, heavy, sour loaf? That's rye bread from Northern Europe. Here's what it's saying. Winters here are long and cold. Nothing grows for months, so we need bread that doesn't go bad after 2 days. The sourness? That's from fermentation. It helps the bread last. We learned to wait, and this bread waits with us. You see soft, white, steamed buns? That's mantua from China. Here's what it's saying. We don't have big ovens like in Europe, but we have water and we have pots. So we don't bake our bread, we steam it. And when you steam dough, it becomes soft and fluffy, like a little white cloud. So that's what we eat. Clouds. You see a spongy, sour, rolled flatbread? That's injera from Ethiopia. Here's what it's saying. We grow a tiny grain called teff. It's too small to make fine white flour, so we ferment it and it becomes spongy and sour. And we don't eat it alone. We lay it on a big plate, put stews on top, and everyone eats from the same bread, with their hands. That's how we stay family. Every bread tells you something about the place it came from, the weather, the tools, the way people live together. You just have to learn how to read it. This is how bread shaped civilization everywhere. It adapted. And in adapting, it told us who we were. And in the heart of these communities, bread also created warmth beyond the oven. In medieval European villages, families shared one big public oven. Baking day wasn't just about food, it was about connection. People gathered, talked, shared news, laughed. The smell of baking bread was the smell of belonging. But bread also feeds something deeper than the stomach. Long before it became fuel for empires, bread became food for the human spirit. Almost every culture, in its own way, placed bread at the center of what it held sacred. In ancient Egypt, loaves were buried with the dead, not as food for the body, but as provisions for the afterlife. In Judaism, matzah, flat, unrisen bread, isn't just food, it's memory. It's the taste of escape, of slavery left behind. In Christianity, bread became the body of Christ, broken and shared as a sign of unity. And you can hear this history in words we still use today. Think about breadwinner. We use it for the person who earns money for the family, but originally it meant something deeper. The person who brings home not just money, but food, life itself. Or think about breaking bread. It sounds simple, just eating together. But when you break bread with someone, it means peace. It means friendship. It means we are not strangers anymore. And here's one you probably never thought about. The word Lord. It comes from an Old English word, hlafwerd, and hlafwerd literally means bread keeper. The person in charge, the one you look up to. At the heart of it all, he was the one who made sure people were fed. That's how deeply bread is woven into our lives. We don't even notice it anymore, but the words are still there, carrying the memory. But not every culture succeeded in adapting its bread code. The Vikings who settled in Greenland, they brought their farming habits from Northern Europe. They tried to raise cattle and grow grain in a frozen land. They refused to learn from the Inuit, who survived on seal and whale. When the climate got colder, their farms failed. Their settlements disappeared. Their bread didn't save them. It became a reminder of what happens when you refuse to listen to the land. This is why every bread tradition that survives today isn't just a recipe. It's a survival story. A people faced a hard question: cold, heat, drought, exile. And they found an answer in flour, water, and fire. Bread shaped civilizations by adapting, and those that adapted best survived to tell their story. Bread has always been more than food. It's also a mirror. It shows us how a society is really doing. In the great cities of the Islamic world, Baghdad, Cairo, Damascus, people judged their leaders by the price of bread. If bread stayed affordable, the ruler was considered fair. If bread got too expensive, people felt the system had become unfair. Feeding the hungry wasn't charity, it was a basic duty. But when that duty is abandoned, bread doesn't stay silent. It becomes an alarm. Let's go to Paris, 1789. A rainy morning, a woman walks to the bakery with her last coins. The bread is too expensive. The shelves are empty. She hears rumors. The rich are hiding flour. And about the queen, people whisper she said, "If they have no bread, let them eat cake." She probably never said it, but that's not the point. The point is, everyone believed it, because it felt true. For that woman, no bread stopped being about hunger. It became about betrayal. The system had broken its oldest, most basic promise. She didn't go home and cry. She got angry. She and thousands of others, mostly women, marched to the palace. They didn't have swords. They had kitchen knives and rolling pins. Their shout wasn't a fancy political slogan. It came from a deeper place. Bread! Give us bread! This is the ultimate alarm. When a society becomes unfair, you might not see the cracks in the law books, but you'll feel them. In your empty purse, in your children's hungry faces, in the rising price of the loaf on your table. Bread's absence is no longer about farming. It's about trust. And when trust breaks, history shifts. This is how bread shaped civilization when the promise failed. It became the measure of justice. We've traveled 10,000 years. But this story didn't end. It's being written right now, in today's news and in our daily lives. The old drama is playing on a global stage. A war in Ukraine's wheat fields can make bread too expensive for a family in Egypt, thousands of miles away. Droughts and floods from a changing climate threaten the harvests that millions depend on. The challenges are new: geopolitics, climate science, but the core question is ancient. Can we still keep the bread promise? And this global question lands in very personal places. Imagine a mother in Cairo. Her name is Anna. In 2022, she goes to buy the flatbread that millions of Egyptian families depend on every single day. The line is longer than usual. The amount she gets is smaller. The worry is heavier. Why? Because global wheat prices shot up after a war far away. Her bread card and your credit card are tied to the same global chain. Her anxiety is the real temperature of our connected world. Meanwhile, a farmer in Kansas watches the sky for rain that doesn't come. He wonders if he'll have to sell land his family has worked for generations. Our bread story has never linked so many lives together. A mother in Cairo, a farmer in Kansas, a scientist in a lab, a baker in Paris, and you, standing in a supermarket aisle, holding a loaf in your hand. We are all inside this story now. This is how bread shapes civilization today. It connects us, whether we know it or not. And this is where you enter the story. You're standing at the most incredible point in this 10,000-year journey. You hold a power no pharaoh or emperor ever had. The power of daily choice. Every loaf you pick is a quiet vote for speed or tradition, for sameness or diversity, for forgetting or remembering. There's no perfect answer, only awareness. So next time you hold a piece of bread, anywhere, pause, just for 1 second. Feel it. You're holding the warmth of the first campfire, the sweat of a pyramid builder, the very first words ever written, a bread receipt, the secret codes of 100 cultures, the pocket of a pita, the sour of rye, the soft cloud of a steamed bun, the memory of exile baked into matzah, the angry cry that toppled a kingdom, bread, give us bread. The hope and worry of our global present, Anna's ration card, a farmer's dry field, your own quiet choice. We made bread, and bread, in return, made us. The fire is still burning. The story is not over. The next page is blank, and the pen is in your hand. What will you write? Thank you, my friends. Until next time.